So now let's dive in and create our very first Hello World web app using the Bottle framework and Python. So you can copy and paste this code here and put it into VS Code, and then I'm going to show you how to use it and run it. So now let's take a look at what this code actually means. So again, this is Python, so you got to import whatever the hell it is that you're going to use. So from the Bottle module, we're going to import run and route functions. So basically, when we go through these different classes, I'm going to show you how to do things like redirect, I'm going to show you post, I'm going to show you get responses, all those types of things. One of the most important things is that you actually import those functions up here. You can have perfect code down here, but if you didn't import the function, it is not going to work. So basically, you're going to, from Bottle, you're going to import whatever functions it is that you need. Then here, we are going to have the route decorator. So this is the route function. I've talked about decorators before in the Introduction to Python class, and basically what a decorator does is this is a function that extends the functionality of whatever other function it's attached to, right? So we have this define, we have this index function here that does a return. Basically what we're doing is we're supergluing this route function onto it to add additional functionality. And so in the Bottle world, the route function, the decorator, this is how users are going to be redirected through your website. When they put in the URL, right, the about page, the home page, whatever else, this is what Bottle is going to look for to redirect them to whatever function is underneath. So when we have the / like this just means root. So the root for this particular web app is going to go to this function here. We're then going to define a function. Define, we're going to need a function name. One of the important things to remember here is that all these function names should be different. So define index, define about, define contact us, define whatever else. It's a quirky thing where you can end up copying and pasting, and the function names normally will work, but you should have a different function name literally for every function so there aren't weird problems. So since this is the index of the web app, we're just simply going to call it index. So define index, there's no variable values coming in, we're going to do colon, and then we're going to do the return here. So return in the Bottle world, when you have route, is going to return to the web browser. So a lot of times when you're doing functions, most of the time when you're doing functions, you're returning to whatever called the function. So basically here, the idea is that the web browser is calling the function, so we are returning to the web browser something, right? Here we're just giving it a string of single quotation marks, H1 hello world, close H1, so we are going to turn to the web browser hello world. They come to the root, we are going to give them hello world, and that is the basic idea of how this particular function works. Then we come down here to run. So this is the most important one. If you forget this, it's not going to work. You need the run function. And basically what the run function is, again, that we imported, you're going to say, what is the host name? Host equals. So normally, I'm going to put down here either localhost or 127.0.0.1, especially when we are doing labs. Why that is this is saying what host name or identifier should I respond to? So localhost, or 127.0.0.1, is the loopback address. So if you're on this computer and you go to this computer's website, that's called the loopback. The important thing to understand is you can put different IP addresses here, or different host names, but it means people from the outside world will be able to get to it. So if I do localhost equals 0.0.0.0, yeah, make sure there's no zeros, right? Basically what that's going to say is that's going to say respond to any request coming to the system. So whether it's on your Wi-Fi network port, whether it's on your hardwired network port, whether it's on 127.0.0.1, if anything requests this web app, provide it to them. So that might be a good thing or a bad thing. Again, that's what you've got to decide with your particular situation. So if you are simply going to be testing your web app on your system, leave it as the loopback. If you are going to set this up and then you want to pull out your smartphone or you want to access it from a different computer, then you would do 0.0.0.0. or you could put in its static IP address. So if you have a static IP address for this particular computer, you could plug in whatever, 192.168.1.55. Right? You could plug that in here, and you could say, I only want this to respond when somebody goes 192.168.1.55, that type of deal. So that's what we're talking about with the host here. This is one of those things that can screw you up. Basically, if you want somebody from a different computer to be able to access your web app when you have this thing running, put this to 0.0.0.0. Otherwise, localhost or 127.0.0.1. Then we're going to do comma, and then we're going to say port number. So this is called the TCP port. So basically all internet or TCP IP based apps have their own port numbers. Port 21, port 25, port 80, right? All kinds of different ports out there. Basically, when you look at an IP address, the IP address gets split. One part of the IP address is the network address. One part of the IP address is what's called the host address, and then the TCP port is kind of the actual app you're looking for. So think about the IP address and the subnet mask. That is going to get you to an office building. The TCP port number, what that is going to do is it's going to get you to a suite in the office building, right? You have an address for an office building, you have a bakery, you have a florist, you have a barber, so on and so forth. You want the barber, you need to go to that particular suite number. That's what we're looking at here. So the default for web apps, the default port number is port 80. So when you go to CNN.com, FoxNews.com, TacoBell.com, you don't plug in anything after the domain name because port 80 is the default. So all web browsers assume port 80. When you're going to be doing this, again with this web app, you're going to be putting in either 8080, possibly 8000. If you really want to go and test your luck, you can put in other numbers here. So when you're going to go to localhost or when you're going to go to the IP address, you will have to put in colon and then whatever port number you have here. So colon 8080. Now theoretically, you could set this to port 80 so that it's a default, but depending on the security settings in your computer, that might be a little bit difficult. So many security settings for Mac or for Linux will try to prevent you from running anything on port 80 because that's supposed to be a secure port. You can't force it to, but you get into some quirky issues. So I would recommend you just leave this at port 8080 and you get used to it. So this is the basic idea of what one of these apps is going to look like. We import Bottle, we import the functions that we're going to use. This is the decorator, the @route decorator basically says where we're going to in the web app. We have the function underneath that is then going to deliver whatever is at that particular page. Then we have run. You're going to put in the host, generally localhost or 127.0.0.1. Then we're going to do port, and whatever port, generally 8080 or 8000. And this is the basic idea of what a Bottle app looks like. And again, like I said, all you have to do is you can click on the run button, and as long as you didn't goof anything up, you will get this listening on HTTP localhost. You can click that and you can see your web app. Now, one of the things that you can do to make your web app work better, even if it's just you using the web app, is you can actually run your web app directly through Gunicorn. So Gunicorn, as I talked about before, is a WSGI Python web server. And so what this does is it allows you to serve this script, but instead of going through the default Python web server, you go through Gunicorn. The good part about that is that Gunicorn is multi-threaded, where the default web server for Python is single-threaded. What that means is basically the default web server for Python can only do one thing at once. So if something slows down for some reason, that's going to slow everything down, right? Gunicorn is multi-threaded, meaning it can do multiple things at once. So if one process or one thing gets slowed down, other things can continue to occur and the entire system doesn't come to a crawl. And that's one thing that you might find, especially if you spin this up. Maybe you have multiple computers. Again, imagine you're going in, you're going to do a site survey or something in an environment, and so you pull up this website on a couple of different computers within that environment. And let's just say you have the Bottle app and it's doing some tests or whatever. Well, if you have 3 or 4 different computers all connected to this web app and you're using the default Python web server, again, with that single threaded issue, you might run into some weird quirks, you might run into some weird slowdown. So if you run your server with Gunicorn, that gives you multi-threaded support and things will go faster for you, may go faster for you. The big thing is, again, you're going to need to do this anyway, is you need to install Gunicorn. So as a pip module, Python 3 --n pip install Gunicorn. So do make sure you do that. And then for run, you're going to add a server value now. So we come back here to VS Code. You can see I've copied and pasted that line into this particular project. So we now say run server equals Gunicorn, host equals localhost, port equals 8080. So now it will use Gunicorn to actually be able to spin up this web app. It is important to understand, again, with Bottle, you can use different Python web servers. So theoretically, there might be a better one for you, but Gunicorn is the popular one. It's the one that most people use all the way around, so it's pretty useful. If I go and I click run now, basically we'll see that it starts running, but you won't get the same listening thing that we did before. Remember how it said listening and then it said at at localhost at 8080. So that came up there. But then all of a sudden we started getting these log files. If we go over and we take a look at Hello World, we can just take a look at it and it still shows up, again for this, it still shows up at localhost at 8080. It's about the same. But that is how you can use Gunicorn to deliver your web app. Again, even if all you want to do is have your web app running from VS Code. Now I do have to give you a warning with Gunicorn, right? So if you don't use Gunicorn and you run this script and then you want to stop it, you can just hit the trash can and stop it and it stops working, no big deal. The issue is when you run this script with Gunicorn, this is actually going to start a service on your system, right? Booting worker with PID 26836. This is actually going to be important. If we go over and we take a look at our little web app that says Hello World, we can see it says Hello World. Well, here's the thing. If I hit the trash can, right, and I go back and I refresh Hello World, we can see Hello World is still there, even though I did the trash can. And if we go over here and let's say I modify something, let's say I want to put some exclamation points in there, and then I want to go to run this script again, we're going to see this already in use error, and we're going to go here, and it's not going to be what we edited, and uh-oh, what's happened? Basically what's happened is we have started the Gunicorn service and we did not stop it properly, and so now it's just going to keep going and going until you will figure out a way to kill it. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to use the kill PID. So basically what we can do to look at the different PIDs of the processes is we can sit here and we can go to list open files for interface at this particular port number, 8080. So we're going to list all basically the open files for port 8080. We're going to hit enter, and this is going to give us our 2 current PIDs. So this is the first one for the for Bottle when we started it, and this is the second one, and we are going to need to kill these, right? So basically in order to kill, you do kill 9, so this force kills it, and we want to say 26835. We hit enter, so that force killed that. Then we're simply going to do 42, make sure that's dead too, and now Gunicorn should be done. When we go over and I do a refresh, there we go. Server can't connect to because the server is no longer running. So that is one of the quirks that if you use Gunicorn, it is better, but if you don't shut it down properly, it's going to keep going and going and going. In order to shut it down properly, all you do is you hit Control-C. So if we go back to VS Code, right? So basically I'm running this. So it's currently working right now. If I hit Control-C, you'll now see shutting down master, and so that's how you shut it down properly. So that is the warning for this particular lesson. Do be careful with that with Gunicorn. It's one of those things, if you get it started and you don't know how to stop, Well, it can be fun, as they say. So now the next example I want to show you is to add an if statement. So when you're going to run bottle, as we're going to show in a number of classes in the future, you can either run bottle from the script itself, like I've been showing you, or when you build out your overall architecture, you're actually going to run your bottle script within Gunicorn. Nginx is then going to connect to Gunicorn, and that's how it's all going to work, right? So when you're using Gunicorn, Gunicorn will access the script and deliver it. The problem is if you have this run function active when Gunicorn connects to this script, basically Gunicorn is going to try to run the script, and then that's going to trigger this function to go off, which means the script itself is going to try to run itself, and you're going to get quirkiness, as they say. Gunicorn's going to try to deliver the app, and then Bottle's going to try to deliver the app, and it's all just kind of nastiness. So anyways, you can put an if statement here, and so basically if underscore underscore name underscore underscore, this is the name as represented by Python, and so basically if you're running this script from the script, so from Python 3 space script name or from VS Code, then the name for it is going to be main. Right? So basically it's going to say if the script is being run directly, not through Gunicorn, not through anything else, you're running it directly, then use this particular function, run host local, localhost port 8080. Basically else, right, if something else is trying to run this script, then don't try to run this. This will make more sense, again, once we start learning more about Gunicorn much later in the series, but I just want you to see this so that you understand what's going on when you see it in the future. So now I just want to take a quick second to talk about adding an if statement in to check the name of this script. So basically, when you're going to be running a bottle script, you can either run the bottle script from itself. So in VS Code, you can hit the run button, or from the command line, you can do Python 3 space and whatever the script name is and run it. And if that's the case, then using the run function is absolutely fine. The issue is this is a function that is going to fire off basically whenever the script is activated, right? And so the issue is Gunicorn, right? When you use Gunicorn in order to present this script as a web app, when Gunicorn accesses the script, it's going to hit this run function, and then this run function is also going to try to run itself. So you're going to have Gunicorn trying to run the script, and you're going to have the script itself trying to run the script, and let's just say quirkiness ensues. It is not a hard failure, it's a stupid failure, right? Because, right, Gunicorn is trying to run the script. As soon as it hits here, it runs this function, so it's trying to run. It's all kinds of disaster. So that's why you put this particular if statement in there. So what this says is if underscore underscore name underscore underscore. So this is the name of the script itself, not example.py, but basically whether or not it's the main script. So if you run this script directly from itself, its name within Python is going to be main. So it says if name equals main. So basically you triggered this script on its own, no Gunicorn, no other web server, just on its own. Then run host, equals localhost, port 8080, and you go for it. On the other hand, if Gunicorn is trying to run the script, or a different type of web server is trying to run the script, then the name isn't going to be main, therefore that is not going to fire off, and so you will not get quirkiness. So that's why you might add this if statement into the end, especially when we go to deploy this bottle script. This might make a lot more sense, but this is just one of those things to keep in mind. Now let's talk about using Gunicorn to run your bottle script from the command line. So this is the command line way that you would run Gunicorn, right? So my example script, the script that we've been using, is called example, and it's sitting at my desktop. So in the command line, I've gone to my desktop. I'm going to call Gunicorn. I'm going to do space -w for workers. How many workers am I going to use? The default number of workers is 4. If you want to figure out the best number for your particular project, go have fun on a Google search. Lots of arguments there. Then you're going to do space -b for bind. Basically, what IP address is this supposed to bind to? We're going to say 0.0.0.0. So basically, any IP address that's on this computer. at port 8080, so colon 8080. Then we're going to say what the name of the Python script is. So our Python script is called example.py, so it's just going to be example. And then we need to call the specific instance of the app within the script. So we're going to do colon app. So it's going to be Gunicorn, the number of workers is going to be 4, bind to this IP address at this port, to this Python script, and to this instance of the app. And to understand where the instance of the app comes from, let's go over to VS Code. We're here at VS Code, and the code looks a wee bit different than what we saw before. So now, from bottle, we're simply going to import the bottle function. So there's a bottle function in the bottle module. Don't ask me. Then we're going to create an instance of this bottle function. So app equals bottle. So where it said example colon app, that's where that comes from. This could be my app. This could be Bob's app. This could be whatever the hell name is. Just a variable name. It can be whatever you want, but it will be script name colon whatever this is. Then you just have to use this within your bottle script itself. So at app.route. So instead of at route, we're going to do at app.route to the root. We're going to return hello world, and that is what's going to give us our hello world. So we're going to import bottle. We're going to create an instance of bottle. We're going to call it app. Then we're going to use that within our decorators. We're going to go over here. Again, from here, all I have to do is hit, and now we can see it's running with that PID of 26994. I can go over to my web browser, wherever it is. I can refresh it, and we can see I have a nice little hello world there. And so basically that's the idea if you're going to be using Gunicorn to call your bottle script from the command line. Again, Gunicorn space hyphen W space 4, however many workers, space B, what you're binding to, the name of the script, colon, what the name of the app is, and that is where we come here for the app. So you would import bottle, the entire function, and this is where you would create the instance, and this is how you would use the instance. Now, if you look at that last example, how you use Gunicorn in order to run your script, you might be like, that seems like a lot of extra work. Is there an easier way to do that? And the answer is yes. So if you look at this particular script, it looks a lot like what we were doing before, from bottle import route and import run, as we did before, but then you'll notice that we're importing this default app function. If we come down here, we can see the at route, there's no app, right? We're not creating an app instance anywhere. At route, the same type of thing. We have this if statement because we are going to be calling this from Gunicorn in the outside world, but then we simply come down here and we say Apple app equals default app. And so this is a way that we can give this identifier for the script so that when Gunicorn comes to this script, it can say, oh, okay, so this entire script is the app. So you do the script name, colon, whatever the app name is. I find this to be an easier way to state what the app name is. So now you might be looking at it and go, okay, so why do one over the other, right? So here we're creating an instance called app and then using that throughout the script. And down here we're just creating our normal script and creating the instance at the end. One takes a lot more typing, one takes a lot less typing. Why would you use one over the other? Basically, it comes down to design, and it comes down to architecture, and it comes down to whatever crappy legacy software you're having to maintain. Basically, there are reasons that you might do it this way, where you need to signify different apps within within its own script. Generally, for what we're going to be teaching in this series of classes and Silicon Dojo in general, you're probably not going to have to mess with this. This just adds a lot more typing, a lot more overhead for something that can be as simple as essentially one line of code and simply adding a function there. So again, our motto here is keep it simple, newbie. So this is most likely what we'll do most of the time. Just realize there might be a reason for this, for you to do this in the future. So that gives you an idea of how the run function works, how the route function, and as a decorator it works, and basically how return works. Basically showed you how to run this from VS Code itself. I showed you how to be able to add Gunicorn when you run this within VS Code, and then I showed you how to use command line to use Gunicorn in order to be able to run this particular script. Again, the big thing to be thinking about this, why would you run this on its own versus Gunicorn? Gunicorn is multi-threaded, the built-in Python web server is single-threaded. So depending on what you're doing, again, and even in a low volume environment, again, you simply bring this up on 3 different computers so that you can take a look at what's going on. That might be enough to make your code a bit wonky, again, in that single-threaded way of doing things, and so you might want to use Gunicorn. The one warning with Gunicorn is when you want to shut Gunicorn down, you hit Control-C. Hit Control-C to shut Gunicorn down. If you forget to shut Gunicorn down and you close the terminal or you close the VS Code window, Gunicorn is gonna keep going, so you're gonna have to use that lsof command in order to figure out what PID Gunicorn is running at, and then you get to kill Gunicorn that way. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind with this is basically this will get loaded essentially into memory. So when you write everything out and then you go to run, everything gets loaded. So anything here within this function, if you modify this, but you do not reload the script, that modification will not change. So again, if I put hello world exclamation points and just keep the script running, that will not change. It will only change when I stop the script and I restart the script. Basically, all that will get loaded into memory, and then you'll have those new changes. So do be careful with that. If you're sitting there and you have the script running, and you start making all these modifications, and then you start looking at the web page and nothing's changed, and you think you're doing something wrong, what you're doing wrong is you haven't restarted the script. Again, remember in the programming in Linux world, restart, 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 restart. When you're in doubt, restart. When you're not in doubt, restart. You know, you just had a cup of coffee, restart, you know, restarting, it makes your life a lot better. Again, the script itself, not necessarily the computer. So anyways, that's the idea with run, route, and return. You now know how to create a very basic web app.